Well, thank you, and thank you. And the reason for this video at the Jackson Center is we have archivist extraordinaire Dennis Frank, and Dennis is the St. Bonaventure University archivist.
Well, I retired 2 weeks ago.
Emeritus now?
Yes.
Okay, we'll add that title. And Juris,
Juris, yeah.
Yeah, Juris, who is a intern, and we'll have him explain how he became an intern here at the Jackson Center, working with Dennis for the last many years in our archives. And since you're going to be leaving us soon, it would be fun to learn a little bit what you've been doing, and we'll learn a little bit more about Dennis as well, your background, and we'll just kind of do it for the next generation. Somebody may pick this up at some point and continue all your good works. So first and foremost, we got to get this out of the way because we don't want to forget this, but in your archive research, just recently, you came across a Robert H. Jackson Center newsletter. So tell us about this.
That's right. Yeah. I think we're gonna talk about this in more detail. But I'm going through those Gregory Peterson files, like the files that Gregory Peterson has created, and they depend on either talking about people. Reporting about, are giving details about specific people or specific topics, and this one is a specific topic thing about the Robert H. Jackson flyer of 2010, so 16 years ago. And when going through this, I realized that 16 years ago there already had been 2 German interns working here, and one of them, she came from my hometown, from Gelnhausen in Hesse. And it's very crazy, really crazy to realize, because Gelnhausen is only a town of about 20,000 inhabitants. And yeah, when just realizing the fact that 16 years ago someone here had already worked as an intern who came from my hometown, this is a very, very, very crazy story.
So, is one of your jobs when you go back to try to look her up?
Well, I can try to, yeah.
Yeah, why not connect the dots? Take a picture, send it back. We'll put it on the next newsletter. Exactly.
Well, if I can contact her and if we'll be in touch, then I promise I'm gonna send a picture to you.
Well, since you're talking here, here you are. You've been at the Jackson Center since really January, I think.
Yeah.
But before that, how did you get to Jamestown? What's your route here to get to our neck of the woods?
Well, I'm here for 1 year stay. I got a scholarship I can call myself a youth ambassador. Me, as well as 65 other German guys, we got scholarships for going here to the United States as part of the CBYX program, which stands for Congress Bundestag Exchange Program, while there are also Americans who are in Germany right now. And we're just placed here, like we couldn't really choose where to go. We're just placed at some places where there are colleges or universities that cooperate with our program. And since the Jackson Community College cooperates with our program, me as well as 2 other German guys were placed here for studying and for working.
Placed at Jamestown Community College.
Yes.
And what did you do your first term here? When you got here in September?
In August.
August, yeah. What did you do for the first few months? Did you work someplace or did you intern? Or?
No, I only was studying. I was studying American history and American politics.
Perfect. Did you learn anything?
Yeah, a lot. Like those are 2 things, like history and politics, I'm very interested in. And it was very interesting for me to learn about them in more detail.
What's your area of American history that you find most interesting? I mean, I'm curious. What would a German find interesting here?
Well, one of my biggest interests might be the American Civil War. I even joined reenactment fightings here in America about the American Civil War, but indeed not only about the Civil War, but also about World War II. So I don't think I can really tell you one specific historical field I'm most interested in. It's just the, let's call it, rather modern history, like from middle of the 19th century.
So tell me a little bit about your background. We now know where you were born and that you had a fellow intern here. But what's your schooling? What's the schooling like in Germany?
What do you mean, like schooling?
Well, elementary school. Is it sort of like ours? Or?
I think it's a little different. Like, we go to primary school for 4 years. Well, there are a lot of extra regulations, but usually then you can change between like 3 ways. One for very, very good students, which is called gymnasium, one which is the middle school, and one for, let's say, rather worse students. But then there are a lot of ways to after graduating from that school, to make extra graduations and to switch from one school to another. So it was a little, even for me, it was a little difficult because I also changed my school. But I finally did my middle school exam at the age of 16. Where, by the way, I did my final presentation. We all do our final presentation in Germany, where I did my final presentation about the difference between the German and the American election system. Well, then I went to a higher school for about 2 years. When when the COVID crisis broke out, it was all a little difficult, and I decided to go an extra way, where you have very good opportunities in Germany to combine school and work. Like I did this thing to go on a called Fachhochschulreife, which means that you have a specific that you do the A-level exams, but you have a specific like work placement that you also join, like an internship. And so I did this and graduated in 2021.
So when you came here, you studied in August through the first term, and then the second term you decided to do an internship. Why did you decide to do it, or why did this become available? How did it become available?
Well, first of all, the reason why I wanted to do this internship here was that because after 2021 I did one apprenticeship in Germany about archival work at the German Federal Archive in Berlin, that's when I moved to Berlin, where I did learn at the German Federal Archive and also went to one vocational school. Well, and then when I came here, I actually didn't have no choice. I was part of our program to study and also to do this internship program. The reason why I applied here at the Jackson Center was because, as I said, I'm very interested in history, especially in American history, and even back home in Germany I do work with historical documents. I was looking for places like this and just asked a few places if a German internship student could be needed. So I talked to Kristen. We had a job interview. She showed me around and then offered this position to me.
Just for the camera, there is some history here where we actually have memorandums of understanding with Nuremberg, with the city of Nuremberg, and where we exchanged information. I exchanged interviews, and they sent us documents as well. And so that's been somewhat ongoing. I think it's been lately not really been activated. So, but there's history here with the city of Nuremberg. And we would go over there annually to do that. And I know currently John Barrett, who you'll meet, maybe you'll meet before you go, he's coming Saturday, is still works with the city of Nuremberg, Christoph Safferling. Christoph Safferling is the person responsible for the German interns. And I think these were probably law students at his, where he was at. He would send a couple of them each year here for like 5 or 6 years for a 6-week period. It was part of their training too. Part of their training was to come here. So that's for the camera, but that's also your kind of a legacy of that time period. And I don't know if Dennis, you were part of any of that process. Let me just introduce our archivist emeritus now of St. Bonaventure University, Dennis Frank. And maybe I should ask, when did you kind of connect with us? Help me out.
Well, it's been longer than I can remember.
Me too.
You established a memo of an understanding with St. Bonaventure. And
It's Sister Margaret, yes.
Yeah, Sister Margaret. And so we're talking, what, 15 years now?
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that. But I don't think I overlapped with the German program.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've been popping in from time to time, working with the archival stuff, trying to get things not organized so much as cataloged.
Yeah.
So that we can work on it, which is what Juris has been working on, one particular part of the Jackson Center collection, where as many of the projects here have been more Nuremberg oriented.
Right.
But these are the Jackson Center archives, so we want to make sure to have that material accessible as well. It all flows together.
A little bit about your life arc. Where are you from originally?
Well, originally from Michigan, but I grew up outside of Rochester, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up down here. My wife is from the Southern Tier and was a librarian at Salamanca. I ended up at University of Pittsburgh's Bradford campus.
But you studied at State University of Geneseo, right?
I finished at Geneseo, got a library science degree there in the end, and made an association with St. Bonaventure while I was working at Pitt Bradford. And when I came back to work after a short retirement, I accidentally ended up as the archivist at St. Bonaventure for 23 years.
And I am reading here, the archives house a wide variety of journalistic collections and historical material. Science fiction author John Cara, expert parapsychologist and exorcist Father Alphonsus Trebold. Especially proud of the collections relating to the 154th New York Voluntary Infantry of the Civil War. So he knows all there is to know about that infantry and the Civil War. So have you guys talked at all about that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Hey, a little, yeah.
We talked about him coming to visit. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Juris was in Rhode Island this weekend, and so was I.
Oh, no kidding.
I was picking up the artifact collection for the 154th New York Infantry and brought that back, and we've just started sorting that out. So, yeah, can't stay away from each other, you know.
That's true. Did you both go together?
No,
Okay.
as a matter of fact, he was there on Saturday, I was there on Monday, so we didn't intersect at all.
Just again for the camera, I find this fascinating because St. Bonaventure's world renowned on its journalism school, but you have Mark Hellinger, Jim Bishop, and Douglas Edwards,
Yeah.
who's my vintage.
Yes,
Douglas Edwards.
yes, first television news anchor ever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Amazing. So when you first, because I know the St. Bonaventure connection, just again, this is for the camera, we did sign a memorandum of understanding. We actually had some programming between both schools. We actually have speakers kind of between both locations. It's not as active anymore, but doesn't mean it can't be. But then through that was a sense of you got a kind of a sneak peek of what's actually here. And I I found this stuff and gathered it. I was a hunter-gatherer, I guess is the term, hunter-gatherer, with the hope that someday somebody like you guys would actually figure out and catalog it and put it in some form where it could become user-friendly. And so that's enter Dennis, his expertise. And I know we had programs, I think, down there and here, just kind of getting our students working on this. And I think I was part of that.
Yeah, to be honest, it's mostly been me.
Yeah.
We looked at ways to involve some of our classes, but it turned out that just logistics, it was an issue. But we did have some interns from St. Bonaventure here working on a couple of different projects directly from the archival collections.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think some interesting stuff was done. And I know that the interns that I was associated with really enjoyed their time here and felt like they accomplished something useful for you folks.
We put together a few exhibits and they're really, really quite remarkable. And as you, with your trained eye, came in cold to look at what we have in our collection, what did you see and what did you think?
Well, there'd obviously been people who knew what they were doing here before I came in the door. A lot of organization had been done. The basic cataloging had been started. It was mostly a matter of picking up where they had left off and going from there. So it's been a question of deciding which things we felt were most important in terms of making them more accessible. Or in some cases, when you have interns, you often choose the area that they work in based on their interests, which may not be one of your top priority items, but you're going to get a better job from people
Mm-hmm.
who are actively interested in it. It's just been basically doing the work from square B, where I showed up, to wherever we are now. Yeah.
Where is the collection? I'm asking a question which I don't know the answer, but
It's in that room right over there.
So it's in a room. And as far as you see the boxes, and we've got video, we have microfilm, we have VHS, you name it. We got a lot of audio visual stuff. Where do you think kind of condition is it in? What's the status of the collection?
Well, you mentioned the audio-visual stuff, which you've had a large part in creating, and a very significant percentage of that, I'm guessing for the stuff that we actually have here, it's probably like 90+% of that has been processed. It's in the catalog, and as the catalog migrates online, that stuff will be very accessible. Yours was just working on I think an important part of the collection, some of the background material for that video work and other activities that went on here. So if we're looking at the Jackson Center collection, we've made good progress in terms of getting it to a point where people can know what's in it. In terms of some of the other collections, it's a little bit more haphazard. They're all in the catalog, so we know every collection that we have. They haven't all been analyzed very thoroughly. So but there's a starting point for everything in that room now, with a few exceptions, I'm sure.
Well, it's just been personal reflection is first 15 years or so, I was, again, a hunter-gatherer. I was out going flea markets, you name it. Anybody, anywhere who had anything to do with Nuremberg or his Jackson's political career, I was interviewing, I was asking, do you have stuff? And they say, yeah, I open an attic, I've got stuff. And I would say, well, if you have, I always phrase it, if you haven't a location, if they don't have it anything specific, at least your family might know that it will be safe at the Jackson Center rather than being dispersed at a household sale or go to one family member overnight. That was my pitch. And years would pass, and all of a sudden I'd get the call, or all of a sudden a big FedEx package would show up with mountains of papers, and the family would show up 2 years later and say, there you go, congratulations. Because now they know it's here. That's sort of was the pitch. If they were giving it to Harvard, Yale, St. Bonaventure, so be it. You know, that's great. I'm not going to change their minds, but that's how we got a lot of that.
That's exactly the same pitch I used for St. Bonaventure.
Yeah, there you go. And sometimes you get lucky. And I know this is my interview of you, but I will give you an example of something out of the blue. And I was doing speeches in Erie, Pennsylvania. This is for the camera, by the way. They've heard the story. Dealing with and there was a Nuremberg prosecutor in Erie, Pennsylvania. That's fantastic. Hoping that he was alive. Well, it turns out in 2001 he was not. But so all of his colleagues, I asked about them, all his septuagenarian and octogenarian people who were lawyers in the area. Do you remember John Bowler? Oh, yeah. Did you know he was a Nuremberg prosecutor? Are you kidding me? Because his practice was estates and practice. Estates. Trust in estates. Nothing whatsoever to do. Did he ever talk about it? Not whatsoever. So he kind of came to Erie, died, and mystery. But his wife that he'd met in Nuremberg was still alive, so I actually did an interview, but not on videotape, unfortunately, at her insistence that it would not be videotaped. I've not had a lot of people say no. She was one of them. But she died 7 years ago, but I just got a call this week that the daughter has found a boatload of papers, and she would like to talk to me about what we might consider doing with that. And so it's the same thing. You know, this is 25 years after the fact. And I'm anxious as all get out to get into it. I can't tell you. As you are, I'm sure, getting in the hunt.
Well, that would be a really interesting project for an intern.
Absolutely.
Starting fresh.
Absolutely.
They'll have to come back here.
Yeah. Yeah, don't go away. Don't stay tuned. We had a similar cache of stuff. It was one of the German generals. Long story, but he had a relationship with a guy in New York City, who in turn had a relationship with a guy in Chautauqua Institution, and the guy in New York City died, and all this cache of stuff ended up at Chautauqua. And the guy came down here and started hanging around. Next thing you know, he says, hey, by the way, I got all this stuff. You know, I don't know quite what to do with it, but I'll make copies of everything. And he gave it to us. And it turned out, the more you read about this guy, he was kind of like high-tier German Reich guy, and we have his files of his it's his diary, meeting with Hitler and all that other stuff. I just thought of this right now. Shame on me, because you would have found that. You will find it maybe interesting. Callwein, Callwein. Anyways, I digress. You're seeing this live with non-scripted here. So what have you, when he came, did he talk to you about what he should be doing? Was there conversation?
Well, yeah, Kristen and I talked a little bit about what would be a good project. And I picked the Greg Peterson files as something that really defined and described what the Jackson Center had been doing since it began. As one that would be interesting, I felt, to work with, but also very valuable in terms of the story of this institution. And then when I met Juris, we started talking, and then it was immediately apparent that he already knew a lot about the archival practices, which is a bonus because I didn't have to worry then that he was going to go off half-cocked in the wrong direction someplace or another.
Well, indeed, this was one of or maybe even the biggest part of my apprenticeship, like to learn that kind of how to describe historical documents.
Yeah. And archives are interesting because every one of them is different. You know, libraries you go from one library to another, pretty much everything is the same. But archives are describing different institutions, and so just automatically they're different from each other. And I think German practices and American archival practices are pretty much the same, because we look at information and those kind of files from that archival perspective, wanting to preserve them in a way that'll make them accessible and useful to whoever comes along interested in that story, that history. So it was very easy for me to be confident after our first conversation that when we walked away that he had a generally good idea about what we wanted here. And I also found out immediately that he wasn't afraid to ask questions, which is my most important qualification for anybody who works for me. Ask me questions. And he asked not just questions, but good questions. And then I would come over from time to time when he had some specific things, and sometimes it's easier to talk about things in person where you can actually look at the documents when you're working in this sort of a situation. And everything went very, very smoothly. I was very, very happy with where we have ended up, and enjoyed the process of working with it.
Where are we? I mean, you've been here now since January, and it's now, for the camera, it's 1st of June. What do you think as you dove into the Greg Peterson, these are legal file folders, in a cabinet. What do you think you've learned from all that? Or what do you think you've added to this?
What do you mean? What I've learned from myself?
Well, two things, I guess. In one sense, you're looking at the file. I'm just like that. You're looking at the file.
I'm looking at the file.
And now you're going to do something with it. You're going to enter it into a log or something that describes the file.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there is this. Well, actually, I don't know the English word. Just one general software where you describe historical documents. Like we also have our one in the German Federal Archive, which is quite similar to the one I'm working with here. And well, I just look at the files. First of all,
okay, let's look at, you pulled one file out for a specific reason. However, it's a newsletter. It's a newsletter.
It's a newsletter.
Now you could enter it, I suppose, simply saying, this file has the Robert H. Jackson Center newsletter dated such and such. And that's descriptive. Or you could take it to another level and say the articles are, and then list the articles. I mean, like the titles of the articles, so people would know that in that newsletter there was something about these. I mean, I'm just guessing here. Does it go that deep?
Well, yeah. I'm trying to understand if I got your question correctly. But usually when I get one new folder, I always, first of all, check how did you name this folder. For example, this one you called Newsletter Spring 2010. So I almost always just use this by you give name as the title of this folder, and then there is this I have to admit I'm not sure about the specific title of this term right now, but there is the part where I just in general describe what this folder is about. For example, in this case, it's a flyer of the Spring 2010 newsletter of the Robert H. Jackson Center, and mention those things I just said. If there are then any very important information that should be added, because they are very important or because you wouldn't expect them to be included after having this general information title, then I would mention those things there. But in this case, I think it's just a very typical thing. I would just write newsletter spring 2010, and like maybe I would mention a few key aspects what this newsletter was about. For example, it was about general knowledge about the Robert H. Jackson Center. It was about German internship program, and it was about memoriam of Samuel Bonavita. Well, then I would try to understand if I can find where this specific document was created. Well, in this case, as I said, it's very easy to say spring 2010, but it can be a little bit more difficult when it's a very big folder, or if even in some cases there isn't no date mentioned. If there isn't no date mentioned at all, there's nothing I can do about it. But in most of the cases, I find dates where I can orientate about. I have to differ in some parts. I find very specific dates of when one specific document was created, like for example when one letter was written. Then if I have this very, very specific document, I fill it in at the date of creation file. And if it's a date about one document, if the date that is mentioned is more, like for example a text about a thing that has happened, then I mention it at the dates of what was the term? Dates of accuration or so. If there is then one very specific date, for example, a lot of those folders are about one specific meeting that took place at the Robert H. Jackson Center, and if I have the impression that this meeting was the main thing what the folder was about, then I mention this specific date in the upper right corner of the database. Well, and finally, of course, the very two important things to look up for those documents are the persons and the subject. Then I try to understand what persons are mentioned. For example, mostly who those documents are about, and also if there are people mentioned who wrote those texts. Then I often also usually mention those authors, people, and then I'm thinking about good keywords that could be subjects to find those folders.
This is fabulous. 'Cause I'm flashing back as to how I operate. I don't operate with an archival thought process. So when I'm putting together a folder to do a program, inevitably most of these things are program related. And sometimes you just have a file, it might be loaded with speeches, articles, anything that led up to the program, stuff I needed for the interview, like person I'm interviewing's speeches, and I have notes all over the place. And then when it's done, you put it together, put it in a folder, put it in a file, that's it. For another, move on to the next one. So you don't think archivally, like put this in order so it'll be easier for the next person, because each file, if it's a program related, it could have a 1941 speech, it could have a 1984 biography of the person that you're interviewing. It could have a menagerie of things. And that's, in case you're curious as to how it's created, I never thought like you guys think, like there's an afterlife. And
probably a good thing.
Yeah, probably. Well, it is. If for you go crazy, and you would stop. I mean, it would create I don't want to say it, I'd lose the creative process, but I just move on to the next program or the next mountain of stuff and let somebody like you guys sort it out. Because there's nuggets in there, but I also am thinking.
But one of the things that you have done pretty successfully is to put that key concept on the
Yeah, that's true.
on the label,
Yeah.
and that gives Juris or me, whoever's working with it, a starting point. And then we can go from there. And that's usually, as I was just saying,
that's
it's
right.
usually the key. It's this event that's important. Now, what we've learned over the years is that most of the questions that we get in the archives involve people.
Mm-hmm.
When someone calls us, usually that's what they're looking for, a particular person. Not always, but very, very often. So that's why we go through, and even if it's some random kind of piece, and we're not sure of the relationship with it, we'll stick the name in the database anyway, so,
great.
so we can get back to that thing and see if it's useful.
Now, the database, is that on a spreadsheet on the computer? Is it like a program? I keep thinking of a Quickens program, but it's not. What kind of program is it, and how do you input it? You're looking at this stuff, which is a good physical file. It's a physical file. And at some point, you take that physical file and you get on the computer and you start doing stuff. What is it you're doing, and to what? You know.
Well, I mean, the database is called Past Perfect.
Okay.
It's one that I've used for a long time at St. Bonaventure. It has mixed reviews, but I like the way that it helps me be better at my job.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it is just a piece of, it's a database file, not a spreadsheet file. And it's set up in a way that makes it easy to put the pertinent information that you discover in the material you're working with in logical places and make them retrievable from those places. So it's kind of fill in the blanks. And the nice thing about the software is that it reminds you of some of the blanks that you might not think about otherwise. And one of the problems I have with like Excel is that it's very challenging to think of all of those potential areas ahead of time, and it can be very difficult to extract the information from them effectively. So that's why the difference between databases and spreadsheets is the type of information that they chronicle and the way that you retrieve them. I don't know. What have I missed?
I don't think there's anything you missed.
I've been doing this for a very long time.
Well, it's important, and again, for the camera, we did have a high school intern named, last name's Camerata, and he worked on my interviews, which were at my house.
Right.
Still at my house. But he went through, then cataloged them in a Dennis Frank way, and put numbers on the spreadsheet, Past Perfect sheet, so you could actually see it. And on each little tape has the number very finely put on. And that's something I got to bring at some point when you're ready for it. It's cartons of.
Well, that's actually a good example of the difference between a spreadsheet, which is what Mike was working on, and what's the other word?
Excel.
Database.
Oh, database. Yeah.
Yeah, Excel and Past Perfect. Because I took the spreadsheet that he worked on, which I had created, and then had to import it into the database, where I discovered that I didn't do a very good job of creating the Excel spreadsheet. Fortunately, I was able to adapt it, copy and paste, move things around in a way to make the import into Past Perfect much, much more effective. Still some glitches came in, but that's why working directly with the spreadsheet in the first place is the preferred way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Mike did a tremendous amount of work.
To this day, he would spend days seemingly never come out of it, and with Mike, because I had to be there, kind of like, and then he would match up to see if we'd actually downloaded them onto YouTube. I mean, there was a process. Here's the original. He's working off of the original tape, and then did I take it to the next level, which was download it and throw it up on YouTube, and sometimes he would add those notes, or I'd explain who the name meant. Who is he? Who is the guy? So it was a really good symbiotic thing for me. I didn't want to do what he was doing, that's for sure. And he didn't have the knowledge for what he would ask the good question, like, who is this guy?
Well, I think you had some of that same experience too, was looking at a folder, and some, especially for some of the big folders where there were even 2 or 3 separate folders with the same label. Who is this person, and why is he important, and why is there so much stuff?
Yeah.
Well,
Some of the questions that Juris had came from those sort of issues. That he didn't know who those people were.
Well, I'm sure among those people is the extensive file on Whitney Harris. Whitney Harris.
Whitney Harris was one of the very biggest folders that was laying on the table for a longer time, because I really needed a long time to go through this folder in total.
He's really one of the high-end guys. He was very close to Robert Jackson. Whitney
definitely.
He's probably the highest level Nuremberg trial prosecutor we ever had here, and he was here several times. Good friend. We interviewed him a number of times. He gave us stuff. He wrote a couple books that we published. You know, he's a rock star, and there's a Harris Institute in St. Louis, named after him. So yeah, I mean, every time he came, we just whatever you could give, he gave us stuff. So I can only imagine it's voluminous, and
that's a good example of. He sent me an email, you know, I got this file, and what do you think I should do with it? And should I do this or that? And I said, I'll come over. And, you know, and we talked about it, and I think came up with the appropriate solution. But, those are the kind of questions that you have all the time when you're working with material in an archival setting is, what the heck do I do with this?
Whitney would be at the top of the list. Henry King would be another one. As I think back in the early days, they gave us voluminous. We were lucky. Timing was just right. That we got so much stuff, and he was so willing to participate. But yeah, I get it. And some of the folders were just like week-long events. I can't imagine what the Brown, for example, Brown versus Board. We did that for 2 years. So at some point you have each individual program. I'm thinking out loud here. And then sometimes you just got the whole subject matter. Brown versus Board and all of its idiosyncrasies and how you slice and dice that so people, you know, is the archivist's challenge of how do we make sense out of all of this data, which is really cool stuff, and some of it's original, to make sense out of it. So I'm positing the question without certainly the answer, and that's what that would be another one. As you're thinking about files that don't lend it, you'd like the file which is very simple, like newsletter 2010. That's simple. It's over, done, and then you can close the file. You know, the Harris, the Brown, the King files, like holy cow.
You know, it depends a lot on the type of collection that you're working with, the amount of time that you have. For example, I have 60 boxes of files from the president's office at St. Bonaventure University. And when I had an intern come in to work on that, he was actually an intern from an institution in Wisconsin. There was no way that he could do what Juris has been doing with the 4 file drawers that he's worked, or 5 that he's worked with. So in that case, all we could do was note the file labels. Mm-hmm. There were thousands of them to get done in a certain period of time.
Right.
Whereas with a smaller collection and a very specific type of collection, like the Robert H. Jackson Center, smaller institution, narrower focus, then you can and probably should take the time to analyze each of these files more thoroughly.
Right.
And but it's always a balancing act, because I would love to have every name listed in all of those files for the president's office, but it's just humanly impossible given the time constraints and so forth to even conceive of that.
Yeah.
Whereas in this case, it made very good sense because that was the whole purpose of that file, was bringing people together for events. So the people were important, the events were important, and we could chronicle all of it because we had Juris to do it.
So, you now, let's see, 5-6 months you've been at this. Do you feel like you've not only accomplished something, do you feel personally you know more about Jackson?
Definitely. Like, I have to admit, even though I have been interested in American history for a longer time, I didn't really know Jackson before. And like going through all those documents and learning a lot about his role in Nuremberg, like especially when seeing this very new Nuremberg movie, when he personally interviewed Hermann Göring, then he plays a very important role, but also learning about his role in the American Supreme Court, was very interesting to me, and definitely I have gotten a bigger picture, much bigger knowledge about Jackson.
You talked about the movie, and again, a personal reaction, not so much about the substance of the movie, but the players in the movie. So when you see Hermann Göring, we interviewed for here probably 5 separate people who were doing what they're doing here right now, you and me, with Hermann Göring. Kind of one step removed. It's a cheap thrill for me. There's actually a guy who's in the movie, Howard Trieste, who was here, physically here, and I did an interview with Howard Trieste. As it turns out, I was the guy who found an interview that they were done in Nuremberg, the only one, done at Nuremberg with Douglas Kelly, who was the main person in the movie. He was the psychiatrist. Even the author had never heard it. Even when we played it for him, it was like, oh man, I wish I'd known this. But we found it. So it's just that kind of stuff when you see a portrayal on movies that we've had those people physically here. And the movie with Alec Baldwin, which went way back in 2003, many of the people portrayed in the movie, the actual people, were here. So we could show them as part of the interview. Oh, by the way, here you are on the film, and it's just such a great introduction. So you're in a place where the history does come alive. The people that you read about are real people that are portrayed on movies, and we have Jackson audio, we have Jackson video, we have a lot of that stuff. And to your point, Dennis, we are not grandma's attic. I mean, we really are pretty discreet as to what we'll take and what we ask for. So a lot of people come in for World War II uniforms, which are kind of, Jackson was Nuremberg was World War II, but we don't want it. Sorry. Or newspapers, 10,000 newspapers of that era. Nah, thank you. We might quick look, but then we're going to discard it. So we've been trying to have much more like historical societies, which take a lot of stuff, harder to do. Mm-hmm. We're pretty discreet, as you said. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of but it's a very narrow focus, Jackson. And we're going to hope to keep him active, involved, even after you leave. He just doesn't know it yet.
I shouldn't have to pull that. I've already had 3 heart attacks spiel on you again. Here.
I've heard that. I never heard that. But here he is. He looks good, doesn't he? How about it? Hey, camera, look at that. Focus in.
Yeah, well, we shall see.
So, what's next for you?
Well, my time here in Jamestown is now coming to an end. But before it's gonna go back to Germany, it's gonna go on a final travel month around the United States, where I will see a lot of things in the United States I haven't seen so far. and seeing Route 66 and seeing California and being in DC at the 4th of July.
Oh my gosh.
I'm really looking forward for that, for being here in the capital at the 250th anniversary of this country. But then it's gonna go back to Germany, and I will just continue working at the German Federal Archive, where I do work with personal documents, mostly of World War II, a little bit of World War I, but mostly World War II. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna continue then. I also have the idea of continuing my studies I have done here in America about politics and about history. I have some ideas in mind how to do that, but not right now.
Well, I'd be most curious when you're back in the archives in Berlin. You may find some Jackson-related stuff. I'm not even sure John Barrett, in his world, whether there was ever been able to access or look at the Federal Archives, because they may, for example, I'm thinking that it was announced that Jackson was going to be the prosecutor. They may have a file on Jackson.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see.
Now, obviously, when it all ended, nobody's stuffing things in the files, I don't think, but maybe, so the Stasi, as life went on and how the Stasi looked at the Nuremberg trial and its legacy, it'd be a curiosity for us, because nobody would have ever thought to do that. I'm just thinking out loud here. If you're there, if you got the keys to the kingdom, have at it. I know we did that. As an aside, when we went to Russia, they were just opening the archives, and Russia was one of the parties at the Nuremberg trial, and I was desperate to find anything. And in fact, in your archives are a couple of books in Russian on the trial. I got them on eBay or something like that many years ago, and we actually had a few Russian students say, I don't know, what are they saying? What's their perspective? I've learned their perspective is the Nuremberg trial was successful because of them, the Russians. And I could say, it's interesting.
Well,
okay. But anyways, be that as it may.
I'm just thinking, if you're looking at more higher education, Greg's idea might be a good project. Robert H. Jackson as represented in the West and East German archives.
Yeah, well, actually, not a bad idea. I don't know if I told you, right now I'm here in Jamestown, even working at an own little historical project where I mostly in the Fenton History Center look for historical documents about Jamestown's role in Civil War and in World War II. So why not starting another historical project when I'll be back in Germany?
Well, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you a nugget. The mayor of the city of Jamestown at the time in the 30s was Samuel Carlson. He was like the mayor for 20-some years. And he actually met with the leader of the German government, a guy named Adolf Hitler.
Really?
Yeah. So our mayor met with Hitler.
So was he in Germany? Or where did they meet?
In Germany.
Oh.
So he was in Germany. So he took a tour, and this is like the early 30s. And it wasn't the war years, but it was during the early 30s. And that got to be very controversial for him.
Yeah. That
he went there because he was somewhat very progressive, almost socialist mayor. He didn't use the term, but that was his policy. And he kind of met and learned a lot about how Hitler in the 33, 34 was sort of progressive, in his thought. So anyway, that's the mayor in Germany.
Very interesting. I didn't know.
So
that.
you find Samuel Carlson file deep in your Stasi files. You'll hit a home run.
Maybe not in the Stasi files, but certainly in the Berlin archive files, and maybe even in some other federal archive files.
So Samuel
Samuel Carlson.
Yeah, that'd be huge for us, because even now we revere Samuel Carlson. We revere him. A lot of things happened because of him in Jamestown. But that's one of those little ones. Oh, by the way, he met with Hitler.
Yeah.
Ooh. You know,
National Socialist.
that's right, National Socialist, no question.
Yeah.
Well, that's very exciting. And you know, we had here the U.S. ambassador, or the German, I guess he'd be the German consul to the United States. German consul, Gil, G-I-L. I don't know if he still is, but he was here, physically here. And we had the attorney here. And his claim to fame is when the wall was coming down, he was in East Berlin. And but he was with resistance. He was part of the resistance, young youth resistance group there. So when the communist thing fell, he was one of the first guys into the federal building and made sure, because they were burning the Stasi files. All the files the Stasi's had, you know, as part of the destroy. So he's one of those guys that was there to save the files. And subsequently, he became now a big official. So I interviewed him about that. It was really cool. Like, you know, deep, dark, secret stuff, you know, saving the files from destruction, which then permitted subsequent prosecution of those officials. You know, your guy, Gil, G-I-L-O.
G-I-L.
I don't know if he's still there. Just a few years ago. Digress. So what's your, I mean, you are really retired.
More than I anticipated. I was supposed to be continuing part-time, and I found out a week before I was done that I wasn't going to be continuing part-time. I of course, having said that, I've been retired for 2 weeks, and I've been in the library 6 days out of those 2 weeks, even the days that the campus was on vacation. And my trip out to Providence to pick up the 154th file was on my time. So so things are just open. I'm still thinking about what my wife and I might be doing, and trying to catch up on yard work and all of that sort of thing. But nothing is written down yet.
Perfect.
Oh.
Though the camera's not supposed to get, but he and I will be talking after this is over. So this is very exciting. I am so thrilled. I'm so thrilled you came here, being part of this. I'm so thrilled that you provided the tutelage to make sure that he's had a good experience.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could tell him that. And we'll be the beneficiaries of it, because however the next iteration happens, because it's an ongoing project. I mean, as you know, archives, you never get to an end.
No.
It's the ultimate annuity. Just keeps on giving.
Not until the Robert H. Jackson Center closes its doors.
That's right. Well then.
Yeah, which probably is not going to happen.
Well, it's one of the great, as being one of the co-founders. Here we are, 25 years later, literally 25 years later, and it's been with me for 25 years. Ed Tomasini for the camera is filming this. But we've had in the last few months pause to reflect, in the beginning. And so we had to dig up my own archives. And some of it's mental, but finding old videos and pictures and stuff to go with at least the first year. Because that's always the most, it was just rapid fire. I mean, every day we had board meetings weekly. I mean, it wasn't monthly, it wasn't quarterly, it was weekly, because it was happening so fast. And just to capture that. I mean, that's part of the corporate memory. Archiving is, while I'm still among us, to be able to talk about that. I appreciate more than ever what you've done, and certainly, Dennis, what you've done for so many years here, just to add some framework and flavor to the thing, and frankly, to give me a sense of satisfaction that, Greg, we're in pretty good shape. We'll never be complete, but we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and that's the case. And it takes longer because you've accumulated so much stuff. But,
Guilty. Thank you guys. This is terrific.
Finally, also for me, a thank you that I had this option to work here during this about 5 months now. It was even for me very, very interesting to learn about all those things about Jackson, and also to be able to work in this historical, let's call it, facility.
Well, I find wonderful is that this continues the German connection, because it goes back some time to Christoph Safferling and the various interns we did have for almost annually. We would have somebody, 2 or 3 folks who would come over here, and you've just continued that on. So make sure you spread the good word if they continue to have that Congressional Bundestag program, which
exchange program.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can tell the program coordinators that they can advise the upcoming being in Blaisdowne Germans here to apply to work here at the Robert H. Jackson Center.
That'd be terrific. Thank you. Thanks for making the time today, because I know we've tried to schedule this, and today's the day. It made it happen. You made an extra effort to get over here. Thank you. And Ed, if we could beg you, we're going to take a picture of the 3 of us.